Hey, good evening. Welcome to Gridiron Gurus from the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel. I'm Travis Lazarczyk alongside my colleague Drew Bonifant. Drew, thanks for being here as always.
Absolutely.
I shouldn't say thanks for being here. You're always here.
Always.
You're a pro. Pro's pro. And with us this week is Mount Blue head coach Scott Franzose. Coach, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good to be here.
Yeah. We're at that point in the season now where playoffs are starting to kind of come into focus for some teams and not for some others. But one of the things that came up this week in a very fine article in today's Portland Press Herald was by our friend Steve Craig, Fitzpatrick Trophy candidates. Drew, have you seen any kids this year that jump out at you?
A couple of seniors who have looked who have impressed and sort of jumped off the stat sheet and everything. One of them is Adrian Larrabee. He's a receiver in a corner for Coney. He's their top cover guy. He's their top playmaker as a receiver. He catches all sorts of routes. He goes deep for them. He catches screens for them. Goes over the middle. Takes hits. Physical guy. So you always wonder if the stats are there, but he certainly fits the mold of the sort of impactful player that you talk about. And another player who I haven't seen this year, but it sounds like he's doing just as well at the quarterback position as Keegan Choate for.
I've got him on my list here.
Yeah, for Winthrop, Monmouth, and Halldale. One thing that looks like they've done differently with him this year is he's been more of a passer rather than a runner. He still will run, but they don't rely on him to go run for 100 yards a game, which has probably taken away the pounding on him and allowed him to do more with his arm. And I have the stats here: 49 of 84 for the season, 882 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, 3 picks. That's if you go by college standards, that's a 190.4 rating. By NFL, it's 119.1. Either way you slice it, that's
too much
impressive.
Math. Too much math.
Yeah, but that's just somebody who has had a good game pretty much every week for them. And Jevin Smith is another player for that Ramblers team who just does a lot on offense and defense. He's a disruptive player. So a couple good candidates. Of course, you always wonder just how the numbers will shake out, if they'll measure up to everybody else around the state. But those have been some impressive players so far.
Coach, who have you seen that's kind of impressed you this year?
Not seeing, we were talking before, we've looked at him on film. I looked at Brunswick, for example, as we're scouting Gardner. Richardson is a kid who stands out. I'm not sure on the stats. It's funny, being in a new conference, you talk about a lot of those guys like Keegan. Jevin's another one, where being an old Campbell Conference guy, where, I could see them fitting into that offense, doing those good things. Those numbers don't surprise me. Mm-hmm. Jevin's very much a very versatile player for them. Was originally kind of a tight end, but carries the ball a lot, lines up all over the place. The underclassman, but, the Geyer kid from Coney, he's probably, I feel, individually, maybe one of the best that we've seen so far this year. It was early, first game of the season. But obviously a good passer. Coach Lippert's got the offense to let him, really shine there, but also an excellent runner. That's the thing that they really focused on week one with us. So he's kind of a do-it-all type of guy that sort of fits that mold.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, Coach. Seems like a lot of good underclassmen this year kind of leading the charge. Rather guy at Coney, Ryan Friend, the quarterback at MCI, stepped up his game a little bit with the passing game and the running game now.
Gavin Roster and Oak Hill, same sort of
Exactly,
thing.
Same kind of thing. Rob Clark over at Winslow, who's been running the ball very well, special teams returning very well, and the kind of anchoring things in the middle of the defense as a linebacker. These guys are all juniors. Their time will come next year. Some of the names that we've heard statewide are Jarrett Flaker from Scarborough, Justin Bryant from Marshwood, Peyton McKay from Wells. Seems to just get a touchdown every time he touches the ball.
Yeah, if you're running back from Wells,
last year.
Yeah,
if you're running back from Wells, you're going to be on this list.
Yeah, and last year when you were at Madison, you also dealt with Tyler Bridge, who won this award.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's and with Peyton, he was one of those that not really a stopgap. I think maybe seemed like, I can't speak for Coach Roach, playing a different position, but played it very well. Really fit a role. They're very much wing T, 2-back system. And Tyler was the guy last year. Fitzpatrick winner, of course, and definitely deserving, but. I could see a Peyton stepping in and filling that role, probably becoming a little bit more versatile and more of an every down guy for them, doing good things.
Yeah. We criticize the award sometimes because sometimes it feels like it's more of a Southern Maine award, or kids from different parts of the state or different positions other than a quarterback or running back kind of get left off. But it's still pretty prestigious to even get nominated. Coach, at Madison a couple of years ago, you had a candidate in Sean Whalen who was one of those semifinalists. And what was it like for you and him to share that, the first Madison kid maybe ever?
Yeah. Well, I can't take any of the credit for that. He did all the work.
Sure.
Had about 2,500 all-purpose yards, between return game, pass game, and running the ball, 1,000-yard rusher. So he fits a position in our offense, and it's the same as Mount Blue. It's a position where we run the ball a lot, but also can line up in the slot and do some good things in the pass game. So, but that was, it was a moment of pride, just because I don't know if we've ever had a candidate in the past from Madison. I was there 7 years. So that was an honor just to have. I felt I had a couple of kids. Evan Best was another one that season who put up similar numbers. I feel they were both equally deserving, but we know the rules. We nominate one. So, yeah, it's I don't know. It was the first time being a Class D school. Sometimes you do tend to fit this stereotype that it is Southern Maine, it's bigger schools. So it was nice to see a smaller class kid get it and feel that he's absolutely deserving. So it was a great, great honor for Sean. And a good thing for Madison as well.
Sure.
Continues to last year with Tyler winning it. Again, from a small school, I remember, it was looking like Anthony Bracamonte from Thornton Academy might be the guy to beat. So to give it to Tyler, that was both were very deserving players. I saw Tyler Bridge play, and he was really impressive. And I only saw Bracamonte play one game. It was that championship game, and I think he was scoring touchdowns from the opening minute. So both game-breaking players, but it was just a good instance of the voters not putting enrollment or class.
Yeah, looking at the player, not.
Look at the player regardless of that.
Yeah, and really hard to ignore those numbers out of Tyler last year. Yeah. Spectacular numbers.
It's been such a short list of small school guys who have won it. Going back to at least St. Hilaire was the first player, I think, outside of Class A from Winthrop in 2001. And Nick Tomasco from Bucksport comes to mind, another kid who just dominated at that level. And then I think it was Jordan Hersom from Levitt. But Levitt was probably a Class B school at the time. I'm not sure.
When Jordan was there, I believe they were still B. I think that was B East. Still
all deserving winners for sure, and whoever wins it this year is going to also be deserving. So
sure.
You wonder what the cutoff though is. Is it something where 5 yards a game at Class D and 5 yards a game at Class A? You obviously go with the Class A kid, but for kids peeling off 9-10 yards a carry, it's
I always go by the eye test. I try to see all these. If you can see the athlete play, all right, that he's good.
Yeah, right.
Whether it's A, B, C, D, we'll see if 8-man players start getting consideration this year. So there's a lot of things for the committee that gives us the list of a dozen names or so to consider.
We'll have a good test case with Garrett Liberty from Miranda Cook. If anybody from 8-man is breaking into this consideration, he might be a player who does that.
Sure. All right, let's move on, Coach. As we've discussed a little, you've moved on from Madison to Mount Blue this year. What are some of the challenges in learning a new league?
Familiarity. Yeah. The continuity. I know 4 years in Madison when I was there. 4 years we spent in the Big East. The Big 10, which became the Big 11, and then a couple of years in Campbell Conference. So anytime coming to a new conference, it's just kind of, you can look at PTC and the storied football and the programs that are there. Now you're living it, you're experiencing it. You still got to get tuned up on who these schools are, what they do, what their style of play is. It's exciting. You love to be. We're football coaches. We love challenges, right? We want to bring that to our program every day. But to be there with the Skowhegans and the Brunswicks and the Lawrences, and it's really exciting. I think biggest thing is just kind of getting your feet under you, and I think the program, we've done that. We've settled in, building relationships, doing a lot of good things really across the board. Just getting familiar every week with, you take Mesolonsky, for example, new coach there. Right. A lot of coaches that have been around for a long time with programs that have that consistency and continuity. Just got to get familiar with them. So that's a lot of game film, basically a lot of game film. It's what we do, right? Break them down.
How much do you lean on Matt Friedman, who you coached with at Madison before he moved on to Skowhegan, who's had experience in this league before?
Oh, absolutely. Matt spending 5 years, 6 years, having that familiarity. We obviously wanted to work together again. We work well together. He's a phenomenal asset to the program. But then having that experience at Skowhegan, really on staff, we joke, well, there's nobody who knows the PTC. In our group, nobody who knows it better than Matt, so he offers great insight there. Can a lot of times tell you, they're going to do this, they're going to run this, we end up seeing that on film. So, those little nuances, that being there, experiencing it, having relationships with those coaches more than I have right now, big help to the program.
Did you have a welcome to the bigger class moment in this adjustment, or did it go smoother than that?
It's been fairly smooth.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying that to be political. It has gone extremely smooth. It's a great community. We've got great supports there in the administration, Chad Brackett, our AD. So, I feel like I told the kids when I first met them, everything that we need to win is here right now. We just got to show up and do the work. Maybe Coney week 1 was that moment, because here's Coney, Coach Lippert, the program and the great success they have. They're known to throw the ball around. This just in, they throw the ball a lot. Yeah. We show up but we know that they were also replacing, I believe, 9 or 10 players on defense. So, but you get a sense of Coney. You don't play them. You see them from the outside looking in, and then when you face up against them, they're one of those teams. I say they don't flinch, no matter who's out there. They have a belief in what they do. Very efficient, and maybe we weren't that evening, so they were the much better team at times on that night. So it was kind of that moment, like just getting used to these are probably the type of opponents we're going to face every week. But Coney was a little bit of that. They were just very good at what they did that night. So
sure. You guys are installing a brand new offense this year. That this team went from a power eye to the spread. It looks like it's taken root. It looks like you guys are scoring some points now, and
yeah, definitely.
Just talk about the process of building that.
Yeah, it's. I always feel coming into a program, we all want to get better every day. You try to sell kids on that if you're working to get better, when we're between those lines, attitude and effort and all of that. That's obviously a great formula for success, a great philosophy. But also coming in, I'm never one of those coaches that says, hey, let's get a little bit better. Let's win a few more games. So you try to set that tone early where our goal has got to be PTC championship, state championship. Have that mentality every day and, adjust our goals accordingly. So I think the players have taken to that very well, and it's a big part of buying into systems quickly. No matter what it is, whether it's power eye, it's pro eye, it's wing tee, we run spread. Spread is it's just such a, I don't know, one of these words. Spread means so many different things to so many different programs. But coming in and the kids have taken to that well. I think a lot of it is just having a mentality that this is what we do, and this is why we do it. It makes sense. The kids have bought in. They've worked hard. Madison was the same way. I felt that, sometimes we don't give kids enough credit. It's always an adjustment, but they're a lot smarter than maybe we give them credit for. These guys love the system. I think they like a lot of it's assignment football. We don't come in and say we want 60% run and 40% pass and types of formulas. Yeah. We have athletes across the field. Sure. We want to utilize those athletes. So we're doing a lot of good things there. Run game we feel is in a very good place right now. Passing game, we're not getting opportunities. We've had a couple of lopsided wins where we kind of stayed away from the pass game early, something we want to get more efficient. The way you make that happen is kids buy in and they do the work and it clicks. And I think we're doing that, really on both sides of the ball right now.
Was there a game where you felt like that started to click more than others? I mean, I covered your Messalonsky win, and it looked like this team was starting to really get comfortable with the concepts and offense there, and just seeing what it looks like when it works out. Was that a big turning point for this team, or just a big game in the evolution for this team, or was there another one that you can point to as being a big step along the way?
That might have been, I think Messalonsky week 2 was probably the moment, where we felt like we had a great prep week. Kids were focused. They were on game plan more. And it was just, sometimes it just takes time. None of us, across the state have a lot of time to prepare these kids, a couple of weeks to get ready for, a wrong color, one that counts. So at that point, we'd had the reps, and kids were working harder, and they're getting, used to our rules and what we're doing. And, we can be kind of amorphous type of offense. We have a lot of different motions, and we have a lot of different, actions built into our game. Messalonsky, I saw all of that come together. One thing, we came out, we obviously started hot. It's not something we plan on, but to come out and boom, 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 down the field, 6 plays, we score 60-plus yards. So that was a game that it really did seem like it was clicking. And I think that's a testament to the hard work the kids put in, also the time that we put in, getting more and more comfortable. And the thing that we overlook a lot as well, I felt that was the week defensively. We started to come together more, fitting into a 4-2-5 defense. It's something that's similar to what Coach Q ran last year with those guys. It was a 40 front, but a little bit different in the way we do things, getting solid and just foundational defense. That was a night where very proud of them, where it felt like, okay, we got this. We're going to get better from here. We're going to have our ups and downs, but that Messalonsky game really kind of showcased what we could do, I think.
Yep. Gardner this week, what kind of challenges do the Tigers present?
I think they're unpredictable. Gardner's a team, like we talked about earlier, not being real familiar with the conference. I haven't played. When Matt and I were together in Madison, I believe was the last time I faced Gardner, back around 2011. Alonzo Connor was still in the backfield for that. If that gives you any, right? I don't want to date myself here. That was a while ago. So, but you tend to think that they're a little bit more power in what they do. But Coach White they're a little bit more unpredictable. They came out Skowhegan. We were talking as a staff that I believe about 60 times they put the ball in the air.
Wow.
So they're not afraid to come out on first down. I've seen that on film the last 2 weeks. Skowhegan and Brunswick, where they'll throw on any down. They have athletes that play in space, so they will spread you with 2x2 stuff. At the same time, they've got some wing formations, some tight end formations where they'll run zone inside. I think their quarterback might be their best athlete. They like to run the ball with him, try to test the edges. So a little bit of unpredictability in what they do. We've really got to be sound, with our outside guys, our force players, making sure we're playing fast and tackling, but also not giving up big plays. It's been a little bit of a touchy situation with us lately about great team defense, 3rd and 9, 4th and 9 things. We got to make sure we're not giving up those big plays.
It seems like you mentioned Michaud for Gardner, the quarterback for them. I mean, he's been kind of lining up all over the place, and I don't know if that's just because they're trying to just find a spark with something, or if that's been due to injury. But he's been doing some running back as well, and then Noah Reed goes into quarterback. That's something that factors into the game plan too, where it's like, okay, we need to not just prepare for him as a quarterback, we need to kind of keep eyes on wherever he is for them.
Yeah, we definitely have to account for him wherever he is on the field. When you see those things, sometimes that can be a tendency, meaning they're looking to put him in a spot where they can have success and get the ball to him. So yeah, we always have to stay on top of that stuff, and I think they do. They have some athletes there. Again, a storied program. They play hard. They've got some team speed. So I think. Especially offensively, I think they can challenge us. Defensively, also, they run a lot of 30 stack. That's a defense front that can challenge us. With the 404s, a lot of what we do in our gap scheme. So we've been working hard this week to get tuned up on that. So I think they pose some challenges for a number of reasons. Their scheme, their personnel, and we know that down the stretch now, what we all have on the schedule. This is that time, like you said, Travis, where playoffs are going to start coming into shape.
Yeah.
Pole positioning. So we got to stay focused on that opponent every single week, and forget about records. We got to look at we got to get it done on Friday night, which means we got to get it done Monday through Thursday.
All right, that's a good point, a good segue point, because Gardner being 1-4 probably needs this game to keep their playoff chances alive. So I mean, it sounds like you're talking about what you've been stressing to your team about playing these important games, but is that something that you say to them too, where it's like, we're going to be playing a team that's kind of playing for their season here, so we need to be able to match that intensity?
It was a conversation we had going into Falmouth, because Falmouth was one of those teams. They're obviously a very talented team, maybe had a rough stretch with a couple of losses, tough Oak Hill, Lawrence matchups. We went down there for their homecoming, and we talked about it, that this is that they're going to be kind of coming for blood. This is potentially a must-win for them. Nobody in this conference wants to start out 1-3. We know that's a huge hole to dig out from under. So Gardner's in the same position, and we just talked about it at the end of practice tonight. This is our homecoming. So they're going to be thinking along the same lines. We want to go to Falmouth and, no offense, wreck their homecoming, right? We got a team now that might be, playing for their playoff lives to stay in this thing. And so we got to stay focused on that.
Yeah, there's 4 teams right now sitting 7, 8, 9, 10 that are all 1-4. The Crabtree points aren't that different between any of them. So a win here or there can be the difference between going home or playing that extra week.
Yep, exactly.
All right, let's look at some of the other games this week. Drew, we'll start with one that's going to be actually Thursday night with Nokomis going to Winthrop Monmouth Halldale in a cross-class game that, when the schedule makers put it out, was probably looking at one of those really interesting games. But Nokomis struggling right now with a lot of young players, and Winthrop looking like one of the stronger teams in D-South.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like you said, it's turned into a mismatch on paper. I mean, Nokomis is just in the middle of that full rebuild. Great season last year, but paying the price for that with having so many seniors. So they've just been trying to find their way. And Winthrop Monmouth Halldale has just been on cruise control since that first game against MCI. Their defense is clicking. Their offense is rolling. They're averaging 5.9 yards a carry on the ground as a team. So it's just everybody's contributing. This team has really been on a roll. It's another opponent in a string of them. That has just been a really good matchup for them. So they have a tough matchup at the end of the season coming up with Spruce Mountain, but this has been kind of the make hay part of their schedule. Yeah.
Coach, as an old Campbell Conference guy, do you get to follow them at all, or are you just blinders on Pine Tree Conference and what Mount Blue's got ahead of them?
Yeah, the second thing you said, I think, the blinders thing. It's kind of tough. You try to stay on top of it and tuned into Maine football in general. We're all fans. I can say put it on paper, and then you got to play the games the next season. But knowing or predicting what I knew from last year, I mean, it doesn't surprise me with Winthrop. They're, I think Nakoma surprised all of us. Well, not all of us, but it's maybe a little bit of that rebuilding season, but having come that incredible season last year. With Winthrop, knowing what they returned, with a great coaching staff, Dave does an awesome job with those guys. They've got the tradition. And it's Coach Mooney and I talked. One of my assistants used to be the old Mountain Valley head coach. So we were in the Campbell Conference together talking about that no matter how Winthrop plays during the season, they really seem to get hot in the playoffs, and they do some good things there. And now they're kind of on that cruise control, looking like they're at the top of the conference. And so it's probably scaring a lot of teams right now, thinking what's coming in the playoffs. Yeah. If they're consistent. They've a lot of consistency there. There's a lot of balance.
Definitely. Another game with a Campbell Conference team. Drew, Oak Hill is going to make the long trek up to Bucksport. It's a rematch of the 2013, I think, state championship game won by Oak Hill, the first of their back-to-back-to-backs.
And, we were talking about Winthrop, Monmouth, and Halldale rolling. No team in Class D is rolling like Bucksport are. They're undefeated. Right. They've allowed a grand total of 13 points this season. They're on 3 straight shutouts. It's everything's been going for them. So this will be a good test of just what Oak Hill has, I think, because they have wins over Madison and Mountain Valley, and they have losses to Winthrop, Monmouth, Halldale, and York. So if they're a pretty good team, they're 2-2 or 3-2 because of the game against Deerigo. But if they're if they're a pretty good team, they probably go 2-2 against those teams. If they're not a good team, they probably go 2-2 against those teams. So we're going to see a little bit more definition as to just where they stand on the scale here. Yeah,
this is a game where win or lose is going to help them with the Crabtree points, which counts your opponent's record. So Oak Hill is going to gain something from this just by playing this game.
Yep, and you wonder from a coaching standpoint if that's one of those things. Okay, we're seeing what the best looks like. We can further measure ourselves against that and get a sense for what we really need to improve on if we want to make that jump with our team to being a team that's tough to beat in the playoffs.
I got to think that's what Coach Doucette is thinking. That's here's a little bit of a litmus test, right? Like you said about where do we stand? We're having some success. Well, but this will be a true test of. I would think any coach would want that. It's like once you face up against that, they're going to gain something just by showing up, obviously, with the Crabtree. But where do we stand? Are we that team? What's the result? How do we feel we played? Whether it's one way or the other, where do we stand and how do we assess it at the end of the day?
They're starting to get some running back depth, too, and those guys run hard. So they're starting to find some offensive rhythm that they didn't have at the beginning of the year.
Right. Finally, a game in the Big 11 Conference, Class C North. We have Winslow going to MCI Friday night. Both teams are 4-1. Both teams have a loss to Wells. Winslow lost at Wells 18-6 in the first week of the regular season and has been rolling ever since. MCI lost to Wells 54-8 last week. Kind of a misleading score because MCI had some guys out with injury, some guys out for violating some team rules. Struggled from the get-go with Wells's just amazing depth, which you rarely see in any level, much less Class C or D. This one's for first place in the North for now. Yeah.
I'm really interested in just seeing MCI's bounce back from that game because you can go. You would think a team can go one of two ways after a game like that. You can either say, "Oh man, 54-8."
54-8.
Yeah. Oh man, maybe we just don't measure up quite as well as we thought we did. Or you can get mad about that and say, okay, that's not happening again, and this is a good opponent to prove just what we're capable of against. So it'll be a good character test, I think, for MCI.
Yeah. Coach, does past history or recent past history matter in these kind of games? Have you found? Because MCI in the last 2 years has had Winslow's number. Beat him in the regular season last year. Beat him in a playoff game the year before.
Absolutely. I think that always plays a role. When you think, hey, if you're on the winning end of that and you think you've got somebody's number, you're feeling pretty confident going in, then you got to realize there's a team on the other end of that saying that, they obviously, they've got that extra motivating factor to play for. So, yeah, that's always a factor. That sounds like it could be a knockdown drag-out right there. And I am very interested with MCI to see when you face that adversity on the field and off, how do you come together? Yeah. How do you respond from there?
Okay. That's going to do it this week for us on Gridiron Gurus. We hope you enjoy whatever games you get out to. For Drew, for Coach Franzose, I'm Travis. We'll see you next week.